A short break is always good for the soul, and Daniel Ricciardo needed one in the high-pressure world of Formula One. He believes that taking a break is vital for keeping one's mind and body fit, especially because he's feeling more rejuvenated and eager to get back on the track next year after a long and tough 2 seasons at McLaren. Continue following to learn more about today's topic. Daniel is so entertaining, and he has a smile that just illuminates the entire room. It'd be impossible to dislike him. He carries a wonderful energy with him, and it's heartbreaking to see him become so depressed at this time that McLaren came to an end. Even though he attempted to remain cheerful, we could tell something was just off. Ricciardo had been trying to adjust to his new team and new car, and his performance had fallen short of his typical standards. So the news that McLaren had decided to terminate Daniel's contract came as little surprise to most of us. Ricciardo had spoken up about his future once more, and it appears that we're going to be able to see him race in 2024. Although we've been led to believe that Red Bull will be his next destination after what one of the team principals on the sport said, Ricciardo could settle in for a starting role in a team that he didn't want to hear about prior to the start of the 2023 season. So keep on watching as we go through his options and see what his chances are that this honey badger is going to join HAAS and what his next available options are if he doesn't. After 2 miserable seasons, the contract with McLaren didn't make sense any longer when he had to look into his options. But little did Ricciardo know that his value at this point had been reduced to basically zero. And there were no chances that he'd be considered a high-value pick from any of the top teams like Red Bull or Mercedes. Ricciardo's only remaining options were back-market teams like Williamson and HAAS. But he didn't want to hear about racing for a team that wasn't capable of battling for speed. And while many were quick to criticize Ricciardo for the poor performance of the working base squad, we saw in 2023 that it wasn't him who didn't know how to drive the MCL 36, but the car that was doing it in a aggressive manner. Nevertheless, that's in the past, and Ricciardo was hoping for a time when Sergio Perez would be caught short, and he would be the first to replace him and play second fiddle to Verstappen. That doesn't appear to be the Honey Badger's true reality. So, with this in mind, what are some of the choices that Ricciardo could consider as we approach 2024? HAAS has become more appealing as a team that has replaced their duo starting drivers many times in the last couple of years. What's the best for the team, and how can we move quickest to get matters better in a better spot and be solid in the midfield, if not going to the front of the midfield? Which, in a moment like that, that's the best we can wish for? Steiner Haas said Ricciardo's experience is something that the team could use, given that they aren't known for putting too much faith and hope in newbie drivers, and their starting lineup now includes 2 pros. The most intriguing aspect of this is that Hülkenberg's contract for the 2024 season is in doubt. And Magnussen has yet to renew his deal past 2023. As far as we can tell, Haas' season didn't begin as intended, and it took 8 drivers to fail to finish the race, allowing Hülkenberg to record his first major point in Formula One after a 3-year break. During the Australia Grand Prix, Ricciardo was complimented that Red Bull's colors look nice on him. He doesn't belong in the pit wall, but among the drivers. And in response to Ted Kravitz's comment, Ricciardo replied that he can do what he does for a year now, and it's not a huge prop, just for a year. This hinted that the Honey Badger might make a return in 2024, but the situation has developed into something very intriguing, as teams will be willing to sign the veteran. Obviously, Red Bull doesn't have a huge plan for terminating the contract with Perez, even though he did so to be an actual threat to Verstappen's championship hopes after his first 2 races of the season. On the contrary, HAAS is a team that can doubtlessly offer Ricciardo a home, especially after what Steiner said about Ricciardo before the Australian GP, saying, "It's a bit early to speak out about a driver change already for next year, so let's see how we're doing with these drivers, Magnussen and Hülkenberg. And for sure at some point I may speak with him, but I can't promise anything because if our 2 guys do a good job, and I think that that's where I stand with it." But for sure everyone's wanted to speak with Danny after a year off. Maybe he knows again what he wants to do, and he'll be interesting for everybody in Formula One. But at the moment, I have a new driver this year, Hülkenberg, that has only done 2 races, so I need to give him a little bit of a chance. I once heard that the best laid plans go astray, and Ricciardo is undoubtedly one of the best contenders that HAAS is, considering again after Steiner's statement went viral during the Australian Grand Prix. Although Ricciardo had other plans for himself and his career, he now has to be content with what's being offered to him, which is a position in a team that could actually score good points and be present in the midfield if the right leadership is provided from his side. Also keep in mind that Ricciardo has already received the $36 million bonus by signing with Red Bull this year. So for him, he'll get to be competitive again, as well as finally race in a team that'll be able to give him what he desperately needs, a chance to be competitive, without taking anything away from Hülkenberg and Magnussen. But they don't have the knowledge and race-winning experience that Ricciardo has under his belt. So if there's anyone that can take the team where it belongs, it's Ricciardo. But now we need to talk about his more practical attitude towards his future, which includes signing with a team that can have a number one driver. Adding to the statement he made in Australia, Ricciardo hinted at a return sooner rather than later. The signs are pointing towards getting back on the grid. I feel like that's where I'm tracking in my head. And a few of the habits that I'm having or doing it pointing towards that. It's only been a few months out of F1, but I think some itches have been scratched, so to speak. I'm actually weirdly fond that the days have had no schedule are the days where I've actually done training and I've done things I would before. So I don't know about being my own boss, writing my own schedule. I don't know. It's actually brought out a lot of things in me when I thought I might just sit on the couch and watch movies all day and eat junk food. I'm just not. That's not me. So even these things have made me realize how much I do care about it. We knew Ricciardo had to compete, right? But we had no clue that he'd be so eager about joining a racing team in 2024. Even though that he still stated that he would not do it at any cost because he wants to race for results and not for the sake of racing, there aren't many teams outside of Red Bull that can offer him this. That's just true. And he may be forced to think about a different direction and lower his expectations. There's still time for him to fill a vacancy at Mercedes, as the Silver Arrows appear to be less dedicated to their connection with Hamilton, who becomes increasingly linked to a move from the team. Russell's performance has been it's just too much for Hamilton, and despite his attempts to blame it on the car setup and performance, it's clear that he isn't the happiest man in Mercedes right now. Even if this strange scenario turns out to be true, the fact that Ricciardo chose Red Bull as a team for which he'll serve as a reserve driver is reason enough for Mercedes to go elsewhere, despite the fact that they have a young talent in the garage waiting to suit up. Either way, I think Ricciardo is a man who deserves to sign with a good team that sees his potential. He deserves better. After all, he's taken 8 Formula One victories so far in his career, with his last race being in Abu Dhabi last year. So, with all this in mind, what do you think about HAAS signing Ricciardo from 2023 onward? Do you think the Honey Badger is going to find a new home and lead the American squad to great success in 2024? Solidifying his status as a team leader, mayhaps? Something he's failed to do in Red Bull with Verstappen's ascension, mayhaps? Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time for the newest updates, and I got nothing else. Goodbye.